Good evening and welcome. Tonight we are continuing the facts about countries around the world. This first part, which is kind of funny because it was made kind of by accident, has become my most viewed video by far, which, looking back on it, I totally understand. It's a pretty relaxing one. So I'm excited to do part 2. So if you are new to my channel or have only seen maybe just the part 1, I'm doing a much longer series on my channel where I go over every country in the world and detail their geography and history. So tonight I'm going to just be reading facts about the countries that I have already covered. So I won't be doing every single country in this video. Obviously, I won't be talking about the ones I did in part 1. So this is just an overview of countries that I've already gone over. So if you're listening to this and hear an interesting fact or a country that you've never heard of, you can check out my Countries of the World playlist and see a lot more detail about its history and geography. But let's just get started. Again, I'll put up a little slideshow so you can see where each country is in the world. And we'll be starting off with Afghanistan, or the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Rising to elevations of more than 7,000 meters, the Hindu Kush dominates much of Afghanistan, separating its northern plains from the southern desert plateau. The Pashtun are concentrated south of the Hindu Kush. Tajiks, Hazara, Uzbeks, and Turkmen live mostly in the north. Decades of war have bred enmity among the ethnic groups and displaced millions. Following Soviet Union occupation and civil war, the Pashtun-dominated radical Islamist Taliban regime ruled most of the country until a U.S.-led invasion in 2001. Despite a new constitution, democratic elections, and a withdrawal of foreign troops, the Taliban insurgency continues. And next is Algeria, or the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. The heartland of Algeria, Africa's largest country, is a fertile coastal region of hills, plains, and the Tel Atlas mountain chain. While the vast Sahara spans 85% of Algeria, about 90% of Algerians live in the north, near the Mediterranean coast. Nearly all of Algeria's export earnings come from oil and gas revenue. Unemployment hovers around 10%. Among youth, it has reached over 25%. After Arab Spring protests in 2010, the government made reforms in elections and subsidies. Because Algeria was once a French colony, many seek economic opportunities in France, which recently set limits on immigration due to terrorism and absorption fears. Next is Argentina, or the Argentine Republic. Half the population of Argentina, South America's second largest country, lives in the Pampas, a central region comprising both fertile plains and the sprawling capital Buenos Aires. But Argentina spreads beyond the Pampas. The northeast is a land of rainforests and waterfalls, including Iguazu Falls. South of the Pampas, dry and windswept Patagonia stretches from the Andes to the sea and to the sub-Antarctic southernmost tip of South America. Over 95% of Argentines are of European ancestry, mostly Spanish or Italian, with significant French, German, and Polish minorities. The pure indigenous population is estimated at less than 1%. In March 2013, Argentina's Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio became the first pope elected from Latin America. He took the name Pope Francis. the legacy of military rule is still an open wound for Argentine society, a time when thousands were tortured and killed. One of the last acts of the military regime was the 1982 invasion of the British-controlled Falkland Islands, called Islas Malvinas, by Argentina. Britain retook the islands in a costly war. Argentina's modern society is working toward a diversified economy and an enduring democracy. And next is the Bahamas, or the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, an archipelago of some 700 coral islands and 2,400 keys. The Bahamas, originally inhabited by the Lucayan people, are famous for being the landfall of Christopher Columbus in 1492, a pirate haven in the 1600s, and a tourism paradise starting in 1898. The Bahamas became independent in 1973 after 325 years of British rule. Tourism drives the economy, which is focused on tiny New Providence Island, home to about 65% of Bahamians. Most Bahamians are of West African descent, with around 10% being of European ancestry. And next is Belarus, or the Republic of Belarus. Belarus, meaning White Russia, consists of flat lowlands separated by low hills and thousands of lakes. Forests cover a third of the country, and marshes occupy much of the south. Ethnic Belarusians constitute 83.7% of the population, followed by ethnic Russians at 8.3% and Poles at 3.1%. The industrial economy of Belarus, a Soviet republic from 1922 to 1991, still hinges on Russian energy and raw materials. Cleanup and healthcare costs related to the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster in neighboring Ukraine, which affected 2.6 million Belarusians, continue to drain the budget. Let me turn the page of my big book so we can read about the next country, which is Belgium, or the Kingdom of Belgium. Belgium, a Western European country that is mostly flat, except for the hilly Ardennes region, is divided between the northern Dutch-speaking region of Flanders and the southern French-speaking Wallonia region. In 1993, the country adopted a federal form of government to give Flanders, Wallonia, and the small German-speaking community greater political autonomy, but the Flanders-Wallonia rivalry continues. In 2013, Belgium crowned a new king, King Philippe. Brussels, the capital, is home to the headquarters for the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. And next is Benin, or the Republic of Benin. This long and narrow West African country stretches from tropical beaches in the south to the Niger River in the arid north. Subsistence farmers grow corn in the south and yams in the north. Known as Dahomey when it gained independence from France in 1960, it was renamed Benin in 1975 to help unify the 42 ethnic groups under a neutral name. Dahomey was popular with the urbanized and mostly Christian south, but not with the rural Muslims in the north. Next is Bolivia, or the plurinational state of Bolivia. La Paz, the world's highest capital city, approved a new constitution in 2009 and a new country name, Plurinational State of Bolivia. The term plurinational was designed to give indigenous groups, at about 60% of the population, more power in a government historically dominated by whites and mestizos. While Bolivia is rich in energy resources, most Bolivians live in poverty, especially on the Altiplano, or high plateau. In 2006, Bolivia nationalized energy firms and moved to redistribute land to the poor. Many in the affluent eastern lowlands resist the reforms. And next, we're heading right over to Brazil, or the Federative Republic of Brazil. South America's largest and the world's fifth largest country, Brazil holds Earth's most extensive rainforest and greatest river system, the Amazon, whose drainage basin covers some 60% of the country. Most of Brazil has a tropical climate, but most Brazilians live near the coast, where highlands and sea winds moderate temperatures. Brazil, a federal republic, has 26 states and a federal capital district, which are often grouped into 5 regions. Portuguese colonization started in the northeast, the cradle of Afro-Brazilian culture. The north region stretches from the state of Amazonas east to Tocantins and Pará. Many people migrated to this region from the densely populated northeast, causing rapid deforestation, but the government now pushes sustainable development. The southeast is Brazil's most densely populated region and economic hub. It has 11% of the land and 42% of the people. 12.2 million crowd Sao Paulo, South America's largest city. The south, with 7% of the land and 14% of the population, lies south of Sao Paulo state. Most Brazilians in this region claim European ancestry and enjoy a high standard of living. The mountains of Minas Gerais state hold vast mineral wealth, feeding industrialization. Recent challenges include austerity measures following an economic downturn and a Zika virus outbreak. And next is Burkina Faso. More than 60 ethnic groups make their home in this landlocked West African country, which gained independence from France in 1960. In 1984, the country changed its name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, country of the upright people, full of courage and worthy of respect. More than 80% of Burkinabe subsist on agriculture and herding, but because the land is dry and infertile, many must migrate to neighboring countries for work. The population is one of the world's youngest, with almost 3/4 under age 30. Next is Cabo Verde, or the Republic of Cabo Verde. 10 volcanic islands off the coast of West Africa make up the island nation of Cabo Verde. The Portuguese discovered the islands in the 15th century and brought in African slaves to work on plantations. Inhabitants are a mixture of African and Portuguese, and most speak Criollo, which is based on archaic Portuguese and West African words. Cabo Verde, formerly Cape Verde, gained independence from Portugal in 1975. Tourism is the main economic driver, but lack of opportunity forces many citizens to emigrate. And next is the Central African Republic. Just north of the equator, the landlocked Central African Republic is on a plateau with grasslands in the north and forests in the south. The country was part of the French African Empire from the 1880s to 1960. The years following have been marked by political instability, despotic rule, and widespread poverty. The population is made up of some 80 different ethnic groups, and Christian-Muslim tensions are strong. The Central African Republic is one of the world's least developed countries, relying on overseas aid and agricultural, timber, and diamond exports. Turn the page of my big book so that we can read about Chad, or the Republic of Chad. Landlocked Chad stretches from the Sahara in the north to tropical savannas and fertile farmlands in the south. The Tibesti Mountains in Chad's northwest attract rain even though they are in the middle of the Sahara. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, Chad has been beset by political instability resulting from the tension between the mainly Arab Muslim north and the Christian and animist south. It is one of the world's poorest and least educated countries. Much revenue from oil production, which started in 2003, is directed to education, healthcare, and infrastructure. And next is Chile, or the Republic of Chile. Long and narrow, Chile is more than 4,300 kilometers from north to south, but never more than 180 kilometers wide. This South American country is well defined by its geography. To the west, the Pacific Ocean. To the east, the Andes Mountains. To the north, the Atacama Desert, driest in the world. And to the south, the Chilean Patagonia, covered with glaciers and ice fields. The country also claims territory in Antarctica. Most Chileans claim European ancestry, and about 1 million Native Americans live in Chile. And next is Colombia, or the Republic of Colombia. Colombia is the only South American country with coastlines on both the Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea. 3 north-south Andean mountain ranges separate the western coastal lowlands from the almost empty eastern jungles. Some Colombians live in cities in the Caribbean lowlands, while others inhabit isolated mountain valleys in alpine cities like Bogota, Cali, and Medellin. Colombia, with one of the most ethnically diverse populations in the Western Hemisphere, has the longest democratic legacy in Latin America. Colombia's government has achieved some successes in battling guerrilla groups and their illegal drug trade. Next is Comoros, or Union of the Comoros. The Comoros Islands are 4 volcanic islands in the Mozambique Channel between northern Madagascar and Africa, but only 3 islands, Grand Comore, Anjouan, and Moheli, make up the country known as Comoros. These 3 islands gained independence in 1975 from France, but the 4th island, Mayotte, voted to remain a French dependency. Comorans share African Arab origins, and Islam is the majority religion. The country is poor, with a history of political instability. And next is Congo, or Republic of the Congo. Astride the equator in West Central Africa, Congo has a small population concentrated in the southwest, with a virtually uninhabited jungle in the north. Most people live between Brazzaville, the capital, and Pointe-Noire, Congo's port city. The Congo ethnic group makes up almost half the population, Some 60 languages and dialects are spoken here. After independence from France in 1960, Congo faced almost 3 decades of Marxist rule, followed by post-democracy civil wars. A new constitution with presidential term limits was adopted in 2002. The economy remains dependent on oil and other natural resources. Next is Costa Rica, or the Republic of Costa Rica. Located in Central America, Costa Rica has coastlines on the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean. The tropical coastal plains rise to mountains and a central plateau. Arenal volcano, among the most active in the world, is a tourist destination. Costa Rica enjoys continuing stability after a century of almost uninterrupted democratic government. Tourism and manufacturing have replaced agriculture as economic mainstays. The nation preserves more than 25% of its land across a variety of national parks, reserves, and wildlife refuges. Next is Côte d'Ivoire, or the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. Formerly known as the Ivory Coast, this West African country has beaches and forests in the south and a savanna plateau in the north. There are more than 60 ethnic groups and diverse religious affiliations. A French colony until 1960, it did not hold multi-party elections until 1990. In 1999, the country started slipping into the kind of tribal strife that has plagued many African countries. Military conflict flared again in 2011, and UN peacekeeping forces helped resolve the conflict and protect civilians. Côte d'Ivoire exports 30% of the world's supply of cocoa. Next we have Ecuador, or the Republic of Ecuador. Ecuador's name comes from the equator, which divides it unequally. One of South America's smaller countries, its regions are the Costa, which grows enough bananas to make the country a top exporter, the Sierra, a north-south belt of mountainous terrain, the Oriente, also known as the Amazon region, and the Galapagos Islands, west of the coast, and most of which is a national park. Most Ecuadorians are considered mestizo at 72%. Increasing migration to the Galapagos brings pollution and overfishing, threatening the park. Regional rivalries and ethnic issues, including land tenure reform, contribute to political instability for Ecuador's democracy. And next is El Salvador, or the Republic of El Salvador. The smallest and most densely populated country in Central America, El Salvador adjoins the Pacific with a narrow coastal plain backed by a volcanic mountain chain and a fertile plateau. The country's Santa Ana volcano is notably active. About 86% of Salvadorans are mestizo, 13% claim European descent, and only 1% of the people are indigenous. Rich volcanic soils attracted coffee plantations, where rich landowners subjugated peasants. The 1980 to 1992 Civil War and recent gang violence have caused many Salvadorans, including unaccompanied minors, to flee to the United States. And next is Estonia, or the Republic of Estonia. Estonia, smallest in population of the former Soviet republics, is a low-lying land on the Baltic Sea with bogs, marshes, and 1,200 natural lakes. Forests cover more than half the nation. Independence blossomed briefly between 1918 and 1940 after centuries of German, Swedish, and Russian rule. During World War II, Estonia was invaded by both Russian and German troops, and after the war it was forced into the Soviet Union. A quarter of the population is Russian. A stable democracy with a market economy, Estonia joined both the European Union and NATO in 2004. Next is Eswatini, or the Kingdom of Eswatini. Eswatini, the small nation known as Swaziland until 2018, lies between South Africa and Mozambique and consists mostly of high plateaus and mountains. In 1949, the British government rejected a South African request for control of Swaziland, and it continued as a British dependency until independence in 1968. King Mswati III, who was crowned at age 18 in 1986, is an absolute monarch with supreme executive, legislative, and judicial powers. Eswatini has the highest HIV/AIDS infection rate in the world, and 1 in 4 Swazis is living with HIV, causing average life expectancy to drop dramatically. Next is Gabon, or the Gabonese Republic. Gabon sits on the equator along Central Africa's Atlantic coast. Rainforests take up about 80% of the land area. Independence from France, which gained control in 1839, came in 1960. In 1991, a new constitution brought multi-party democracy. Oil, timber, and manganese earn Gabon one of the highest per capita incomes in Africa. However, the income goes to a few. Most Gabonese live by subsistence farming. In 2002, the country created 13 new national parks, but elephant poaching continues, and some 11,000 elephants in Gabon have been killed for their ivory since 2004. Turning the page so we can read about Guatemala, or the Republic of Guatemala. Guatemala, heavily forested and mountainous, is the most populous nation in Central America. The Pacific coast lowlands rise to the volcanic Sierra Madre. Forested northern lowlands include the narrow Caribbean coast. More than half of Guatemalans are descendants of the indigenous Maya peoples. By 1960, Guatemalan society had grown increasingly polarized between the military rulers, Ladino, mostly mixed Maya-Spanish ancestry, upper class, and indigenous lower class, and a revolt started a civil war, which ended in 1996, after 36 years. The democratic government faces problems of crime, illiteracy, and poverty, but it is making economic progress. And next is Honduras, or the Republic of Honduras. The second largest country in Central America, Honduras possesses a landscape that is about 80% mountainous, with lowland areas along the long Caribbean and short Pacific coasts. The Maya ruins at Copan are the major tourist attraction. The largely mestizo population speaks Spanish. Amerindians inhabit northern and western Honduras. The Garifuna, and Afro-Caribbean people populate northern coastal areas. Honduras is one of the poorest countries in the Americas, and most citizens are subsistence farmers. Violence associated with the illegal drug trade has caused many to seek asylum abroad. And next is India, or the Republic of India. India's geography is one of contrasts. The barren, snow-capped Himalaya, the world's tallest mountain system, rises along the northern border as the dry Deccan Plateau stretches to the southernmost tip. The Thar Desert consumes the frontier with Pakistan, but eastern India receives some of the highest rainfall in the world during the monsoon season from June to October. The fertile Ganges Plain is the most populous region. Projections have India's population surpassing China's around 2022. So we'll have to see very soon, I suppose. Indian society is highly diverse. Hindi and English serve as official languages, but the government recognizes 20 other languages that are used in various parts of the country. Although 80% of Indians are Hindu, India also has one of the world's largest Muslim populations, as well as many Christians. India was part of the British Empire from 1600 until, guided by Mahatma Gandhi, Indians won nationhood in 1947. India has the world's third highest GDP and is often called the world's largest democracy. Decades of sustained economic growth have reduced poverty, creating a burgeoning middle class, and diversified the economy with industries like pharmaceuticals, information technology, and entertainment. Mumbai is India's largest city and is home to Bollywood, India's film industry. Bengaluru is India's Silicon Valley. And next is Indonesia, or the Republic of Indonesia. Indonesia is a vast equatorial archipelago of 17,508 islands between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, with dense rainforests and some 100 active volcanoes. Secular Indonesia, the fourth most populous nation, is 87% Muslim and the world's largest Islamic country. It is highly diverse, with over 300 ethnic groups and more than 700 languages and dialects. After independence from the Netherlands in 1949, the new republic started as a democracy, but dictatorships and corruption followed. Direct presidential elections started in 2004. Government priorities include reducing poverty and environmental conservation. Next is Jamaica. Jamaica is the third largest Caribbean island. Its tourist-luring sugary sands and beach resorts share the densely populated coastal plains with Kingston and Montego Bay. Inland are hills, plateaus, and the forested Blue Mountains. After Columbus landed in 1494, the Spanish brought in slaves. Today, 90% of the population is of African descent. Though the British controlled the island from 1655 to 1962, African culture has produced Rastafarianism, reggae, and Jamaican jerk seasonings. Crime is a problem due to the drug trade and unemployment. Remittances from overseas Jamaicans contribute billions to the economy. Next is Kiribati, or the Republic of Kiribati, which you can't really see in this picture, can you? It's very teeny tiny. Straddling the equator, Kiribati consists of the Gilbert, Phoenix, and Line Island groups, stretching some 3,900 kilometers across the Pacific. These mostly low-lying coral islands gained independence from Britain in 1979. In addition to fishing and copra, which is coconut kernels, the country relies on foreign financial aid. Phosphates were the main export until depleted in 1979. Phosphate earnings went into a trust fund for the islanders. In 2008, Kiribati created one of the world's largest marine protected areas, the Phoenix Islands Protected Area, or PIPA. Rising sea levels are encroaching on the land area. And next is Liberia, or the Republic of Liberia. Liberia lies just north of the equator in West Africa. Inland from the coastal plain are forested plateaus and highlands. Freed American slaves began settling here in 1820. In 1847, Liberia was declared Africa's first independent republic. Americo-Liberians dominated the government until 1980 by restricting the voting rights of indigenous Liberians. A 1980 military coup drove Americo-Liberians from power, but corrupt military rule brought civil war from 1989 to 2003. UN troops arrived in 2003 to stabilize the country, and in 2005, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf became Africa's first democratically elected female president. Turn the page again so we can talk about Malawi, or the Republic of Malawi. Malawi lies landlocked in southeastern Africa, with Lake Nyasa taking up about a fifth of the landscape. An estimated 57% of Malawians speak Chichewa, the language of the Chewa, Malawi's largest ethnic group. David Livingstone and other missionaries introduced Christianity to Malawians in 1859, and today more than 3/4 of the population is Christian. Independent from Britain since 1964, Malawi was an autocracy for more than 30 years. Democratic elections came in 1994. Malawi is a poor country. Tobacco generates most of the export earnings, but uranium production is growing the economy. And next is Malaysia. Malaysia stretches from the Malay Peninsula to Borneo, where swamps rise to jungle-covered mountains, and which it shares with Indonesia and Brunei. A little over half of Malays are Muslims. Minorities include ethnic Chinese at 26%, Indians at 10%, and some 60 indigenous groups. In the mid-19th century, Britain brought Chinese to work the tin mines. By the turn of the 20th century, rubber plantations employed imported Indian laborers. In 1957, the Federation of Malaya gained independence from Britain. Malaysia, a federal democracy with a ceremonial king, has a strong high-tech economy. Next is the Maldives, or the Republic of Maldives. The island nation of the Maldives is south of India in the Indian Ocean. The islands are small and none rise more than 1.8 meters above sea level. The Maldives rest on an ancient volcanic mountain range, forming 1,190 coral islands. About 200 are inhabited. In 1968, 3 years after independence from Britain, the Sultanate gave way to an Islamic republic and multi-party democracy. Tourism and fishing sustain the economy. Hundreds of thousands of tourists, mostly from Europe and China, fly to the Maldives to enjoy modern resorts and pristine beaches. And next is Mexico, or the United Mexican States. A large part of Mexico is high plateau, flanked by mountain ranges to the east and west. In the southeast lies the Yucatan Peninsula, an extensive limestone plain that is only slightly above sea level. Mexico's climate depends on latitude and altitude. Lowlands are hot and humid. The high plateau is cooler in summer and cold in winter. The north is arid, and the southern coastal regions get the most rainfall. Situated atop 3 tectonic plates, Mexico experiences frequent earthquakes and volcanic activity. Mexico is the world's most populous Spanish-speaking country, and the population is economically heterogeneous and multicultural. Mexicans are highly urbanized, and most reside within the densely populated Central Plateau region or waste of the country, including the cities of Veracruz, Mexico City, and Guadalajara. The majority of Mexicans are of Spanish Indian descent at 62%. 28% identify as indigenous or predominantly Amerindian. Mexico declared independence from Spain in 1810 and went through a series of autocratic governments before the 1910 to 1917 Mexican Revolution. Its 1917 constitution created a federal democracy. It has a highly industrialized economy and free trade agreements with over 40 countries, though 78% of its exports go to the U.S. In 2016, about 36 million Mexican immigrants lived in the U.S., sending home more than $25 billion in remittances. And next is Moldova, or the Republic of Moldova. Landlocked Moldova lies between Romania and Ukraine. The country consists of hilly grassland, and rich black soils make it prime agricultural land. Most of Moldova was part of Romania before World War II, after which it was taken by the Soviet Union. Moldovan independence came in 1991. While Moldovans are the majority, at 78% of the population, there are significant minorities. Ukrainians at 8.4%, Russians at 5.8%, and Gagauz, also known as Christian Turks, at 4.4%. 2/3 of Moldovans speak Romanian, or Moldovan Romanian. Moldova is one of the poorest countries in Europe. And there's an extra part here about Transnistria. After the Soviets annexed Moldova in 1940, Russians and Ukrainians settled in the industrial region east of the Dniester River, known as Transnistria. Upon Moldova's independence in 1991, Transnistria seceded and won a war against Moldovan forces. Transnistria has announced plans to join Russia, and Russia's 2014 actions in Ukraine have stoked separatists' inclinations. Russian troops have remained in the region since 1991, though Moldova still claims Transnistria. About 32% of the estimated 511,000 Transnistrians are ethnic Moldovans, with Russians at 30% and Ukrainians at 29%. Next, we have the Netherlands, or the Kingdom of Netherlands. The Netherlands' first defenses against the North Sea went up some 800 years ago. Today, more than 17,000 kilometers of dikes keep 65% of the country from being flooded daily. The country has one of the world's highest population densities. About 60% of the country is farmed, with super efficiency by just 2% of the workforce. Tourism is important to the country, and many come to see Dutch art, architecture, and tulips. The Netherlands maintains economic relationships with elements of its former empire, Indonesia, Suriname, and the Dutch Caribbean islands. Next is Nicaragua, or the Republic of Nicaragua. Nicaragua lies at the heart of Central America. The Pacific coastal region is a fertile lowland plain with active volcanoes and lakes. The northern highlands region is mountainous and cooler and contains cloud forests. The Caribbean lowlands, dominated by tropical rainforests, hold about 60% of the country's land. Volcanoes, earthquakes, and hurricanes are a constant threat. Since independence from Spain in 1821, Nicaragua has endured dictatorships, military interventions, and civil war. Elections in 1990 brought democracy and economic growth, but poverty and corruption continue to be major problems. Next is Niger, or the Republic of Niger. The northern two-thirds of landlocked Niger is covered by the Sahara. Savannas are in the south. The Aïr Massif is a green region amid the desert. A crossroads of ancient trading empires, Niger came under French control in the 1890s and gained independence in 1960, which was followed by dictatorships, military coups, and only brief periods of democracy. The country is overwhelmingly Muslim. Lack of economic development has caused periodic uprisings of the Tuareg, nomadic people in the north, causing additional political instability. Except for uranium exports, Niger's economy is agricultural and pastoral. And next is North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, occupies the northern part of the Korean peninsula, with mountains covering more than 80% of the land. Thousands of North Koreans have fled to China because of human rights abuses and food shortages. Since the early 1990s, 500,000 to 2 million North Koreans have starved to death. Nominally communist, North Korea is a dictatorship led by the Kim family since 1948. Despite chronic food shortages, the government devotes large amounts of money to maintaining one of the world's largest armies and a nuclear weapons program. Next is North Macedonia, or the Republic of North Macedonia. A landlocked and mostly mountainous country, North Macedonia proclaimed independence from Yugoslavia in 1991. Its original constitutional name at the time was the Republic of Macedonia, but the United Nations officially referred to the country as the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, due to Greece's fear that its name implied a territorial claim to the Greek region of Macedonia. In 2018, the two countries agreed that Macedonia would adopt the name North Macedonia in exchange for Greece dropping its veto of Macedonian entrance into NATO and the EU, and the change was implemented in early 2019. Most citizens of North Macedonia are ethnically Macedonian at 64%, but 25% are Albanian. In 2001, ethnic Albanians launched a rebellion, eventually securing some minority rights. The democratic government is showing success in moving from a centrally planned economy to a market economy, and hopes that further integration into Europe will help. And next is Pakistan, or the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Pakistan lies between Afghanistan and India. The west is arid and mountainous. The north rises to the great mountains of the Hindu Kush and Karakoram. Home to ancient civilizations, the region was under British rule until 1947, when the country was created for the Muslim population as part of the partitioning of British India. Tension with India, embittered by conflict over Kashmir, continues. Pakistan has also had to focus on its border with Afghanistan when that country has been at war. The economy depends on agriculture and textiles, especially exports. Military coups have marred Pakistani democracy, and poverty and low literacy rates challenge the government. Next is Papua New Guinea, or the independent state of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea spans the eastern half of the island of New Guinea and many nearby islands. Almost half the continental land area is mountainous, and about 20% consists of swampy plains that are seasonally flooded. The indigenous population is highly heterogeneous, with about 860 native languages, because the mountainous terrain has separated communities for centuries. The country, which gained independence from Australia in 1975, is a parliamentary democracy. Papua New Guinea possesses both a modern economy based on oil and mining and a traditional economy relying on subsistence agriculture. And next is Peru, or the Republic of Peru. Peru stretches down the Pacific coast of South America just below the equator. The Andes rise from the coastal desert plain. Vast rainforests lie east of the mountains. The majority of Peruvians are either Spanish-speaking mestizos at 59%, or members of the Quechua-speaking indigenous groups at 23%. Sites such as Machu Picchu and Cusco recall the wealth of the Inca civilization, destroyed in the early 16th century by Spaniards. Today, Peru ranks among the world's top producers of gold, silver, copper, and zinc. At 23%, the poverty rate is half of what it was in 2004. Next is Sao Tome and Principe, or the Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe. In the 15th century, Portuguese navigators discovered Sao Tome and Principe, two volcanic islands off the coast of West Africa in the Gulf of Guinea. Sao Tome is the larger island, with about 90% of the population. Africa's second smallest nation by area after the Seychelles, It gained independence from Portugal in 1975. In 1991, the formerly Marxist government made a transition to democracy, but politics is dominated by a small number of leading families. Cocoa plantations are a major employer. Recent oil discoveries are being developed jointly with Nigeria. And next is Singapore, or the Republic of Singapore. Singapore, comprising the low-lying Singapore Island and some 50 smaller islands, is at the tip of the Malay Peninsula and was briefly part of Malaysia in the early 1960s. Nearly 20% of its surface area is reclaimed from swamps and the sea. As a trade center of the British Empire, Singapore attracted Chinese settlers, now 74% of the population. Thousands of multinational companies have offices here because of its strategic location between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Independent since 1965, Singapore is Southeast Asia's financial hub and one of the world's busiest container ports. Next is Slovakia, or the Slovak Republic. A landlocked country in Central Europe, Slovakia is mostly mountainous except for southern lowlands along the Danube. The high Tatra Mountains shelter historic castles and villages, while also offering national parks and winter sports. The country split from more affluent, industrialized Czechia in 1993 was prompted by Slovak nationalism and grievances over economic reforms that left many Slovaks without jobs. About 81% of the people are Slovaks. Ethnic Hungarians, at 8.5%, form the largest minority. Slovakia's industrial economy has transformed to being market-oriented. Slovakia joined NATO and the EU in 2004. And next is the Solomon Islands. Northeast of Australia, the Solomon Islands consist of 6 main islands and 980 smaller ones that are volcanic and forested. Guadalcanal is the most populous. A strategic battleground during World War II, the islands gained independence from Britain in 1978. About 95% of the islanders are Melanesians, speaking some 73 indigenous languages. Ethnic tension between natives of Guadalcanal and Malaita escalated into armed conflict from 1998 until 2003, when an Australian-led peacekeeping force restored order. Most islanders are subsistence farmers and fishermen. Logging is a major industry, and deforestation is a growing problem. Next is South Sudan, or the Republic of South Sudan. South Sudan gained independence from Sudan in 2011. The White Nile bisects the nation and flows into Africa's largest wetland, the Sud. Open plains dominate the countryside. Highlands rise along the southern border. South Sudan emerged after decades of devastating civil war, in which the Muslim Arab-dominated government fought the mostly Christian and animist black separatists. A comprehensive peace agreement granted the South autonomy. Border and oil disputes continue. Most of the reserves are in South Sudan, but most of the pipelines remain in Sudan. The new government is dependent on oil revenue. Next is Switzerland, or the Swiss Confederation. Located in West Central Europe, Switzerland has the Alps in the south and the Jura Mountains in the northwest. Between the mountains is a central plateau with rolling hills and lakes. About 23% of the country's population is foreign-born, and the foreign languages spoken most often are Serbian and English. Switzerland has been independent since 1815 and is firmly committed to world peace and neutrality. In 2002, it became a member of the UN. A history of political stability and expertise commerce makes Switzerland a post-industrial economy, reporting one of the world's highest per capita incomes. Next is Tajikistan, or the Republic of Tajikistan. Mountains cover more than 90% of this Central Asian republic. Earthquakes, landslides, and flooding are constant hazards. About 84% of the people are Tajiks and 14% ethnic Uzbeks. Most are Sunni Muslims at 85%, and about 5% are Shiites. Shortly after independence in 1991, Tajikistan endured a 5-year civil war between the Moscow-backed government and Islamist-led rebels. A peace agreement was signed in 1997, but the turmoil depressed the economy. Tajikistan relies on foreign aid, and about half the country's population lives in poverty. Next is Trinidad and Tobago, or the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is the most southern island country in the Caribbean. Trinidad features plains and hills. Smaller Tobago is mostly hilly, but the southwest is largely flat. Trinidad and Tobago's people are mostly of African or East Indian descent. Britain granted independence to the islands in 1962, and it is the second largest English-speaking country in the Caribbean after Jamaica. Unlike other Caribbean nations, it is a major oil and natural gas producer. The democratic government works to control violent crime caused by the islands being a transshipment point for cocaine. Next is Ukraine. The heartland of Ukraine is fertile, flat earth known as the steppe. After the Russian Empire fell in 1917, Ukraine was partitioned between Poland and the Soviet Union. A Soviet-engineered famine in 1932-33 killed millions. In 1986, Ukraine suffered the worst recorded nuclear accident in Chernobyl. Having won independence in 1991, Ukraine elected a pro-Western government in 2004 and reverted to a pro-Russian government in 2010, leading to the 2014 revolution. By 2025, Ukraine's population will have declined by almost 1/5 from 1990 due to emigration and a low birth rate. And next is the United States, or the United States of America. The United States consists of 49 states in North America and one in the North Pacific. Densely populated eastern states cover coastal plains. Central states lie in lowlands drained by the Mississippi River system. The Rocky Mountains, arid intermontane plateaus, and coastal ranges occupy the west. The original colonies declared independence from Britain in 1776. Since its founding, the U.S. has been a multicultural nation built by immigration. In 2012, minorities constituted 37% of the population, including 3.9 million indigenous people. Per capita earnings are among the highest worldwide, but income inequality ranks high among developed nations. Next is Uruguay, or the Oriental Republic of Uruguay. Uruguay, a land of low prairies, is located on the Atlantic coast of southern South America and is the continent's second smallest country. The coast features many lagoons, sand dunes, and scenic beaches. Uruguay has one of the highest urbanization and literacy rates in South America, and it claims the lowest poverty and population growth rates. Yet many Uruguayans, most of whom are of Spanish or Italian descent, emigrate for better job opportunities. Uruguay's economy remains dependent on agriculture, mostly ranching and services. Economic diversification, including development of hydroelectric and wind power, has spread optimism. Next is Uzbekistan, or the Republic of Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, in Central Asia, is dominated by the Kizilkum Desert. The Aral Sea, shared with Kazakhstan and fed by rivers tapped for irrigation, is a fraction of its original size. Uzbeks, who are the second largest non-Russian ethnic group in the USSR, descend from Turkic peoples and largely practice Sunni Islam. Uzbeks make up 80% of the country's population. Uzbekistan has the world's largest open-pit gold mine, but economic growth and living standards are among the lowest in the former Soviet Union. The autocratic government is becoming more rigid as Islamist groups threaten it. Next is Vanuatu, or the Republic of Vanuatu. France and the UK jointly administered these 83 islands, known as the New Hebrides, for 74 years until independence in 1980. Vanuatu has 9 active volcanoes and is prone to earthquakes. During World War II, the U.S. launched attacks from here against Japanese troops in the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. Tourism augments income from copra, meat canning, and timber sales. Foreign aid plays a major role in the economy. Next is Venezuela, or the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Venezuela, in northern South America, was named for Italy's Venice by 15th century European explorers. The Lake Maracaibo Basin splits the Andes in two. To the southeast, the remote Guiana Highlands host the world's highest waterfall. The 2011 National Census reported 50% of the population as brown, likely mixed race, and 42% as white. Venezuela is one of South America's oldest democracies. The nation has the largest proven oil and natural gas reserves in South America, and among the largest in the world. The petroleum industry accounts for half the government's revenue. However, corruption and mismanagement have led to political instability, widespread poverty, and emigration to other Latin American countries. And lastly tonight, we have Vietnam, or the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. In Southeast Asia, Vietnam stretches along the South China Sea. Its coastal plains separate the Red River Delta in the north from the Mekong Delta in the south. Vietnam has 54 ethnic groups, but ethnic Vietnamese are 85% of the population. Independent for almost 1,000 years, Vietnam became a French colony in 1884. Armed struggle won independence in 1954, leading to the partition of Vietnam and war between non-communist South Vietnam and communist North Vietnam. The country was reunified under a communist regime in 1976. The economy is now one of the fastest growing in Asia. And that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good night. Good night.